All right, I love the exciting intro music. We have, I know, the greatest panel of the day. Not only are we last, and we saved the best for last, but we're gonna be talking about all things Utah. I wanna tell you a quick story. So the other day, I've got 5 kids, I got 4 boys at home. My 9-year-old, well, my 13-year-old, okay? He's up at night, we're talking, he's about ready to go to bed, and he's like, hey, Dad, what is nuclear power? How does it work? And so I'm like, man, if I can't explain it to my 13-year-old, how do I explain it to everybody else? But it was a really neat conversation. And then on Sunday, I go home, and my son, he's over on the counter, and he likes to draw comics, okay, like his own comics. And the most recent comic that he just came up with was Nuclear Man. And so apparently in my home, I've been talking a lot about nuclear power, nuclear development, just all things energy. And it was awesome because this Nuclear Man shot lightning bolts into the power lines and it electrified the grid. And it was amazing. And so I know it doesn't work like that, but in his mind, that's how it works. And so even to the kids in Utah, the idea and the concepts of energy, power, nuclear, and a future that's going to be bright is being driven home. And so today we're going to talk about how do we drive that home? How do we, build that nuclear supply chain that will benefit Utahns? So we're going to do some quick introductions, but we've got 4 great panelists. We've got Drew DeWalt from General Matters, Mark Chalmers, the CEO of Energy Fuels. We've got Mayor Tom Westmoreland from Eagle Mountain, and finally we've got Rick Springman. He's the president of Global Clean Energy at Holtec. So Drew, we'll start with you and then we'll go down the line. If you want to introduce yourself and just kind of give your thoughts about nuclear energy in Utah.
Yeah, thanks, happy to be here. And thanks for all the prep putting this together. This is a great event. I got into nuclear as a nuclear submarine officer in the Navy, and then when I got out of there, I didn't want anything to do with nuclear for a long time, but it's brought me back in a big way. And so as Scott and I started talking about what General Matter could and would be, I think there was a lot of opportunity. It felt like a ground shift probably 2.5, 3 years ago. As I describe it now, there was a long history of nuclear nerds pushing the benefits of nuclear, safety, all these other things, and for the first time, I think folks aren't taking for granted, especially if you're a large load manufacturer else, that the power is going to be there. And so now you're having a time where you're getting this pull from industry, and people want these dispatchable energy solutions. So it's just a really exciting time for nuclear, and I'm happy to be back in the industry.
Okay, my name is Mark Chalmers, and I'm President and CEO of Energy Fuels, and we're at the very front end. Everybody's been talking about generating nuclear energy, and we're the miners. We're out front, and we're mining uranium in Utah right now. We've got people underground. We've got processing at the White Mesa Mill in San Juan County. We've got a couple hundred employees. We're ramping up our production, and couldn't be prouder that we're doing that. I've probably been in the business longer than most people in this room. I've been in the mining business of uranium for 49 years this year. I started in the region. I've mined all over the world, and I'm right back from where I started from and proud to be here.
I'm Mayor Tom Westmoreland of Eagle Mountain. And Eagle Mountain's a pretty young city, both in the time that Eagle Mountain's been around and also in our population. We have a young population, and we're one of the fastest growing cities in the state. So we tend to be involved heavily in just about every growth conversation that there is, whether it's transportation, jobs, education, water, power, all of the things that our families need. We have to be really planning for the future and have a clear vision of where we're going. And so it's a real privilege and honor to be here, part of this conversation, and thank you for having me.
Hello, Rick Springman. It's good to be back in Utah. It's been about 20 years. I was here many years ago. It's a great love story I'll tell you sometime, but I met a girl in Idaho, in Paris, France, lived there for 9 months, learned how to snowboard, and we took a trip down here, but it's definitely been a while. In my 24 hours of being back, I have to say I'm blown away by the support from the state. I've heard more get-her-dones in the last 24 hours than I think I have in the last 10 years. So love to hear the positive attitude of the state and the willingness to actually deliver real projects. And that's really what I've been focused on is delivering real projects for the last 15 years at Holtec. I've led our international business, set up overseas operation centers, about 6 companies I'm still running today. Setting up our strategy, and now I'm leading our global clean energy opportunities, including for the last 12 months a mandate for the U.S. So that's why I've been everywhere around the world, but haven't been back to Utah. But it's great to be back. I really appreciate the cooperation by the 3 states. We've been active also in Wyoming, kind of under the hood, but hopefully we'll have some announcements there looking to deploy our small modular reactor. I've been very active in Utah working with our partners here, High Tech, who already provides hundreds of peoples for us across our existing operations. And then with Idaho National Lab, of course, obviously a natural leader in the nuclear sector for the history of nuclear. And we're doing our test loop for our small reactor and have also projects there for thermal energy storage, which we'd like to bring to the state eventually. So glad to be back. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. And I love the concept of the get her done, because that's what we do in Utah. And speaking of that, Mayor, you know, this concept of get her done, you see the rapid growth in your community, as you mentioned. And, you know, I guess, you know, we're looking to add nuclear energy to our energy, our electrical portfolio. And, you know, how do you see, and do you see Eagle Mountain as a pioneer in Utah's nuclear future?
Yes, I do, definitely. Eagle Mountain prides itself of being innovative and a pioneer in many categories. And there's no category that's more important than energy. We have to, you know, our families have to know when they flip that switch that power comes on. It can't just be a maybe. Our businesses rely on it. Our families rely on it. And so it's a big responsibility and an important responsibility for the local municipalities like Eagle Mountain to be looking into the future, planning ahead, because these things don't happen quickly and easily. It takes planning and a lot of people working together. So Eagle Mountain is happy to be part of this discussion and be involved.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point, is that reliability, right? That certainty. When you flip on the switches, you know it's there. But within the industry, let's talk about the supply chain a little bit. We've got a couple of really, or several well-versed and seasoned individuals that understand the supply chain. So, Mark, for you, the supply chain in Utah, you talked about Energy Fuels, right? You're at the very front end. So, that supply chain, I mean, what's the, you know, the time frame when we look at supply chain and providing fuels into nuclear production? What do you see that? And then maybe a follow-up with you, Drew, as well, and some of the work you've been doing to look at those products, and then how do we get them into actual production?
Well, the first thing is it takes a long time. And the White Mesa Mill was built in 1980, and it is the only remaining operable mill left in the United States. And to get a project like that permitted in today's world, constructed, and operable, to get the supply chain established, is no small feat and very hard to replicate. So we've got a head start that we've got a fully permitted, operable, manned, producing uranium facility right now, also surrounded by a number of fully permitted mines to feed the mill. And that takes like a decade or two to get that momentum. And to talk about how fragile the supply chain is, we have one project that is in a lesser state than Utah, Wyoming, or Idaho. It's in Arizona. I'm born in Arizona, so I can say that in Utah. It took 38 years
Oh my.
from the time we started that project to get the uranium ore out of that mine into the White Mesa Mill. 38 years. I built the mill, the mine, excuse me, in Arizona 38 years ago. It had 6 legal challenges.
Did you start when you were 1 or 2? Because you,
I
mean, if it took
did
38
actually.
years, holy moly.
Yeah, I had a pacifier that had uranium in it. And it had the 6 federal challenges, was appealed to the Supreme Court twice, tried to get blocked by Navajo Nation, 38 years. So anyways, it's important to have the infrastructure in place, the permits, and avoid legal challenges to get the supply chain to the market.
And I think on that point, we want to make sure it gets done properly as well, right? But this regulatory environment is a challenge. So maybe Drew, talk about the regulatory environment you face and what you see in your work you do.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to think about the entire supply chain. Mark's in a very important part. We need the uranium out of the ground. When you think about nuclear, you have to think globally, especially when it comes to supply chain, right? They're leading the charge, and we do need domestic supply of uranium, enrichment services, fuels, all these things. But this is an industry that is dominated by folks that we might not get along with now or in the future. Russia and China being big players, Europe, everything generally goes through there. 50% of uranium ore comes out from Kazakhstan. So this is a global solution of which the United States generally has, I always say, done sort of what we did with chips and outsourcing these to Europe and Asia. We did that with nuclear in large part, only we're further behind in repatriating that in the United States. As a quick 101, Mark pulls it out of the ground cost effectively, great operation. To be able to create power in a nuclear reactor, you have to enrich that ore, and that's what we do. You fab it into fuel, you put it in a reactor to create high quality heat and power, and that's the quick journey here. But it's just an important step because the only folks who do enrichment at commercial scale right now are 2 European countries, Russia and China. We have to bring this back. I think when you look at the US, there's 3 states that are mining uranium. There's only 1 spot that converts it ahead of coming to an enrichment spot. There's actually 1 enrichment facility in New Mexico that is fully owned by the Europeans with all the economic benefit going back to Europe. You have to fuel fab that in 4 or 5 facilities, east and west coast, and then put in these reactors. And there's so much amazing work done in the reactor space. You know, Holtec is doing amazing work, X-Energy, Westinghouse, Oklo, Radiant. These are all folks solving the other end of the equation, really awesome solutions. But as much as nuclear, I think historically, folks don't think about the fact that it supplies 20% of our grid power in the United States. It's now back in focus. The federal government has realized this is a huge issue, and states like Utah are realizing that. And to repatriate this in America, you need that federal, local support, and you also need, I think, a long-term benefit of co-locating these assets, right? And you can imagine a future where Utah pulls out of the ground, does the processing, fuel fabbing, and puts it into reactors in the state, and that becomes, you're a powerhouse not just for energy export, as the governor talked about, but you're a powerhouse for knowledge and hardware export that I think is super important.
Let's kind of cradle to grave, right? And there's a lot of opportunity there that I think that raising awareness and really making this an emphasis and a focus will help us get and achieve those in a more robust and effective way. So Rick, I've got a question for you from Holtec's perspective. You guys are on the ground, you're doing nuclear energy production. You know, so when you see that and you've seen these projects come online and work through some of the opportunities there, but some of the most critical gaps that exist in the supply chain and also just getting to deployment. Maybe talk about some of the challenges and how can we here in Utah help meet some of those challenges or the opportunities, what can we do here?
Yeah, thank you. I think Holtec's in a slightly different position than some of the advanced reactor companies because we have traditional PWR fuel assemblies that we use that are in production today. So it's low enriched material. So it's not quite the crisis of availability of the higher enriched material above 5%. I do believe with the comments on bringing back the full gamut of domestic supply chain, although the assemblies that we're working with a company Framatome, they make them in Washington State, a lot of the materials are sourced internationally. My view is that needs to really be demand driven. We need to build the fleet to build the order book, and then we'll be able to do the production at scale to help drive the cost down. When I think of the supply chain at Utah, I really think about the entire kit and really having kind of project-led approach to delivering it. And this is what we've done internationally. When you go bid internationally, it's great to win the tender, but you actually have to have a plan to deliver the project. And that's where I'm focused on starting. And we're working with our partners here, HITECH, on identifying sites and looking to put together commercial projects. But we can bring not just the nuclear power plants. There's a lot of reactor companies. We're actually a project delivery company. We have our SMR 300 technology, but we can bring the technology. We can actually build the plant EPC. We have 3 U.S. manufacturing facilities already producing about 90% of our components. We're the largest nuclear exporter in the country. And we want to bring new factories. We're looking at Utah as a key to building up our scale for the West. But then once you have a project framework, you can actually put a detailed plan on what skills and jobs you need. And working with HITECH, we can systematically lay out a plan to get the workers and the people to actually do the job that we need, but in a coordinated and systematic approach. So the way I see it in Utah, it's not just bringing nuclear power or selling you a reactor. I want to bring the entire nuclear ecosystem to this state to deliver large-scale fleet deployment of our SMR 300.
I love that, and that's the end goal, right? So there's some steps necessary to get there, and one that I want to really focus on here is community engagement, right? And we've heard some discussion today about different kind of concepts and different things, but generally speaking, and the governor really said this well in his opening remarks. He's just a few years older than me. I was born in the 70s as well, and really from the time I was born until now, there hasn't really been a lot of additional nuclear development and deployment. And we've missed a generation of opportunity because of that. And part of that is because of pushback from communities, right? Unknown, uncertainty, mistrust, and just lack of information. So Mayor, I want to really direct this question to you. Eagle Mountain is, as we've said, it's a new burgeoning city out in the west side of Utah County, and it's no stranger to innovation. You've done some amazing things there. And so what do you feel like the local appetite is for nuclear energy, and how do you see your city fitting into the state's nuclear future?
Yeah, great question. Our populace, our residents are, tend to be young and well-educated. And so these are savvy people that are starting for information. And so we've begun to have that conversation with them so that they can begin to engage. We've given them a pathway to engagement, if you will, so that they can get their questions out, get their questions answered.
So rather than avoidance, it's engagement.
Yes, and we're not afraid of any question. Bring your fears, bring your questions, bring your concerns, and help move this forward. Let's get those questions answered, get those dealt with, because we're not intending to cut any corners. We want to really do this right. We want to do it a Utah way, and in Eagle Mountain we say we want to do it the Eagle Mountain way, which is doing it right and doing it well.
It's really getting her done. Yeah. All right, Drew, you have something on that?
Yeah, and if I could just add, I do think, and because Tom and I talked about this last night, implicit in a lot of this, there's great jobs, high-paying jobs, good economic benefits. But when we're under the nuclear umbrella, let's be honest, everybody's like, well, what about the safety thing? Everybody wants to ask this. And I would just encourage us. I feel like we have a room full of roughly nuclear advocates. I think in general, we end up on our heels on this one. Oh, well, let me explain the science to you and all this stuff. I'm a little frustrated with that at this point because, like, the answer is if you put Russia, which you shouldn't forget, but in a bit of a box, the stat you need to know about nuclear is 0. 0. Nobody has died from this thing, okay? This is safer, and if you, on a per megawatt hour delivered basis or any other metric, it's 0. This thing is safe, right? And you have to be concerned, and that's why the NRC is involved in a safety basis. This thing that is inherently super safe has all these other measures on top of it to be super safe, and you work with John Wagner at INL to make sure you're doing it right if you're doing new technology. This thing is safe, so quit being on your heels and just tell everybody it's 0 and you want it in your community.
So message is, it's safe. We all need to be sharing this message.
Okay, I'd like to follow on that. You know, like I said, I've been in this since I had the uranium on my pacifier. But if you go back, you know, back in the 70s, you know, nuclear power generation was new, and people were afraid of the safety. And now, 50 years later, you have the statistics to prove that it's safe.
We have a track record. We have a history.
Yeah. So I think that's gone a long ways. And I also say compare a vehicle from 50 years ago to a vehicle today, too. There's no comparison. But on the consultation, there wasn't enough of that done 30, 40 years ago. It's an important element of where we are today. People, you know, do they want to know? Some don't, but most do. And but I really think the key here is that we have 50 years of SAFE. We've got bipartisan support, and it's happening around the globe on nuclear.
Yeah, I love those comments. Rick, did you have something to add, or are you good?
Yeah, I think we're beating this one to death, but just to, you know, add, because
That's why we're here.
We have 70% of the U.S. used fuel in storage in containers that we, you know, hit with aircraft and do all kinds of other testing on. I mean, there's some of the safest structures made to man. But on the waste thing specifically, which people use that to poke, there's no solution. Like, there is technical solutions to manage the waste streams from nuclear power plants. We already have a disposal facility here in Utah. We've been safely storing the fuel for a long time. And I think unlike other industries, we are the most responsible industry when it comes to our waste stream. We categorize and track everything. We know where all of the materials are, and fuel, it's a very low density, solid form fuel. So there's not large volumes, okay, that are high density. I mean, there's not large volumes. So it's easy to manage, it's easy to handle, and it's safe to store. And there are plenty of technical solutions to dispose of this. There just hasn't been a political solution to do it. Okay, so fuel is safe, and as an industry, instead of spewing it into the atmosphere, we are the most responsible. We track everywhere and make sure that it's stored not just for hundreds of years, but if we dispose it for millions of years. So just to put the nail in the coffin.
Joel, I have a quick request, if that's okay. If just
sure.
a little bit out of turn
said
here.
we want to be
but,
free-flowing.
But
Let's do it.
could our industry leaders come up with a different term other than waste? It's so incorrectly descriptive, I believe. It's anyway, just a request.
That is, it creates, especially when you talk about nuclear waste, right? It creates a certain perception, a mindset that you immediately go to. And we kind of joke a little bit about, like, you know, the three-eyed fish on The Simpsons or whatever it may be, right? That's this perception back from the 90s. But it's just, your mind immediately goes there, and it's just incorrect, isn't it? And Mark, to you, and maybe to follow up on the point you were making, you're actually in this industry. You had some, you know, your company went through some challenging times with your processes and working with that local community. And, you know, there is a lot of misinformation and fear out there, but also there's ability to overcome those challenges. Maybe touch on what you did specifically to help overcome some of those challenges.
Well, the White Mesa Mills in San Juan County. It's down not too far from Monument Valley, right, Four Corners region. And really our challenge over time has been the misinformation. And There are a number of groups, NGO groups, that want to put fear. They want to use fear to their advantage. And that has been the biggest challenge I've had in my career globally, is people telling people you have something to be fearful of, and that you're going to die, and it's going to kill you, it's going to pollute your water.
All of those are incorrect. by the
Yeah,
way.
all incorrect. And it's hard to, I've had indigenous people tell me, they say we're going to die, and you say we're not. We can't take a chance. We have to believe that we're going to die. So fighting that misinformation is the biggest challenge, because the facts are the facts. And I tell people that if you have a project today and you're not in compliance, I don't care what state you're in, or really pretty much whatever country, in Australia and the developed countries, you're not going to be able to operate. That's the new world we live in. Right. It wasn't that way 50, 60 years ago, but it is today.
But talk about how you engaged with your community and overcame that. I mean, it was a good outcome.
Yeah, well, there's a couple things. We set up a foundation about 4 or 5 years ago because we hadn't done enough engagement in the past, okay? But we are now. We had a dispute with transporting uranium across the Navajo Nation from the Pinyon Plain mine, which we had all the legal rights to transport, but we elected to work through the fear with the Navajo Nation. We came up with an agreement. It took us 6 months to get the agreement. Very positive, but it was the kind of outcome you want, because it was good for the Navajos, it was good for Energy Fuels, it was good for the entire region, it was good for the industry, but it took a lot of work, and it sets the stage for other types of agreements with indigenous communities, and it also gives us a platform to clean up the Navajo Nation, working with the Navajos and the White Mesa Mill.
That's great, a very positive outcome. Drew, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, I also want to talk about, we talked about this subject, which is important, but
And
I don't
this-
want to lose sight of the opportunity here.
Right, so this is the last comment on this
Great.
subject, by the way.
Perfect. I think from an opportunity perspective, the way that nuclear advancement is going with the support from communities around the world, this is going to happen. It's going to happen somewhere, and a community or communities are in the United States. And so the flip side of this is a question of what communities want an advanced workforce with great jobs that are leading from the front. And I think this is where, obviously, the reactor space, when you're delivering megawatts to a grid and you correlate human welfare and all the things that are correlated with energy growth, but then from a supply chain perspective, these are just high technically dense, great jobs that have all these tertiary benefits. And I think nuclear is unique in the fact that it is multifaceted, and there's the fuel supply piece where General Matter plays. There's an entire pumps, pipes, parts, vessels that need to be NQA-1 certified, supply chain piece. There are the reactors themselves. There's the tertiary benefits outside of that, on top of the fact that if you're gonna stay ahead in the AI and compute battle, there's probably not many more solutions outside of nuclear from a long arc scale. So this thing that we're trying to build somewhere, hopefully Utah,
Definitely Utah. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
it's not in my hands. It's not fully in my hands. It's happening. It's going to happen. And I think what everybody here is looking for is communities that want to be a part of this, want to invite this in, because companies like mine have to make at least a 40-year investment. And so our incentives are aligned with being a part, being engaged in the community, helping in these programs from the high school level on up through vocational, everything else. And so this has to be a partnership with companies, local communities, and a state for this whole thing to be successful. And we do believe that Utah has a lot of those pieces in place.
Yeah, and on that, the economic opportunity is absolutely incredible that comes with that. And a lot of this, so I grew up in a rural community, okay, a little farm community in northern Utah. And a lot of times these little communities get looked over when we start talking about job creation and economic development. But I think nuclear is a little bit different. Maybe we can touch on this. How can we make sure that you think about where it's being mined, very rural, San Juan County, very rural. where a lot of the production and other opportunities are, is going to be in rural Utah. And so how can we ensure and how can we make sure that they participate in things like the job creation, infrastructure development and investments, that those investments, those opportunities flow into our rural communities and they don't just get overlooked in this. And I don't know if you have any examples, maybe Rick, if you have any examples there, or anyone else, let's make sure that our rurals participate in these opportunities.
Yeah, look, if you look across the state specifically here, I mean, a lot of the opportunities for site development are in rural communities, so I think it is kind of naturally a fit to work in those areas. And I think once you have a project like that, and everyone talks about first of kind risk. I'm so sick of hearing it because not enough people are talking about first of kind opportunity. Our first project is in Michigan at the Palisades site, which is a site we acquired to decommission. Working closely with the state, we have a great relationship with the state of Michigan. We're restarting that power plant and putting up our first 2 SMRs. The second site as well, it's going to become like a hub for all things SMR. I mean, I travel all over the world, and everyone wants to know where is our reference site, our reference project. The number of visitations is going to become a tourist mecca in the first spot. But, I think if you look at kind of the sites in Utah, it naturally lends itself. I think you want to put manufacturing in areas that lend for transportation across the state and also in the broader region. And I think some of the things that you're already doing with the way the tax incentives are set up, where you have a larger investment tax credit, for example, if you do it in a rural area, drive the right types of incentives to get companies to look more toward those areas. And I think there's more that can be done. I believe in private solutions that are supported by governments when it's in the interest of public. And so a lot of the programs that the state has already put together in terms of supporting the early development of sites, that's the hardest part to get through, to get the project to the point that you can get commercial investors. That's key. The investment tax credits that favor rural areas for manufacturing, another thing that's key. Behind the meter permitting to enable new projects without impacting the broader public, another important step. And of course, this is a journey. We understand there's going to have to be additional things put in place. And I think the financing availability could be another area for the state to explore for energy projects in general, to have a state financing option, potentially in partnership with the Loan Program Office through the CEFI program, could be interesting. And potentially they could also drive to qualify, toward rural areas and rural projects would be another way to do that.
Love it. Anyone else have any comments on how we?
Well, this really is regional planning, right?
Absolutely.
So speaking from a municipality, a city and town's perspective, is not one community is going to be able to do it all. So really it's in our best interest to work together to use all of our strengths and maximize those opportunities in planning regionally. So working as a county, as neighborhoods, and along with the state and our industrial partners.
I talked about our foundation we set up about 3-4 years ago. We committed 1% of our revenue from the White Mesa Mill for San Juan County. And to put that in a context, over the last year or two or so, it might have been $500,000 or $600,000 per year. But if we achieve our goals, both with our uranium production and our critical mineral production, rare earth production, that could be $4, $5, $6 million a year in a county that has 14,000 people in it. And we have an advisory board,
incredible.
and we have a website where people can go on and apply for worthy causes, and it gets reviewed and we distribute it. And that's on top of the jobs. That's on top of the 365-day-a-year full-time job. So we're doing more to distribute the funds to the community so people can actually say, I applied for this, I got special funding that didn't exist from other opportunities, and we're really proud of that.
I love that it becomes an additional benefit for those rural communities. I love it. Okay, so Governor Cox this last year announced Operation Gigawatt, which was a plan over the next 10 years to double Utah's energy capacity. And so I believe that nuclear plays a significant role in that plan and is part of our future and going to be part of the future landscape for the state of Utah. So, guys, I want to ask kind of a broad question. If Utah gets this right, what does the nuclear landscape look like for the state of Utah in 10 years from now? Where are we going to be? What is achievable? And how do we get there, really, right? And I'll have a follow-up question to that. But Drew, what do you think? What does the landscape look like for nuclear in Utah in 10 years from now, over the next 10 years? We're going to be killing it.
Yeah, I think
We're going to be having brownouts. What are we going to do?
No, not brownouts. I mean, it is the most high quality, firmest power there is out there.
So we're going to do it.
So you should do it. I don't know if you're going to do it.
We're going to get her done.
But you should do it. And I think it's just long-term, nuclear is going to be a part of most grids. I think the faster you get there, the better. I do think it isn't all of the above. There are different uses, not just for different types of energy, but even different form factors of reactors for different use cases. But I see in a 10-year time frame, all of these reactor business we're talking about are ready to build these things. Like the engineering and the technology and the design and the siting, everybody's ready. There are regulatory hurdles that are pretty slow, but we're ready to build. So you could see operating reactors in the state delivering megawatts to the grid in 10 years. When you talk about the supply chain piece that we're a part of, there are big embedded costs with how distributed this thing is globally. I mean, that supply chain I walked you through, sometimes it goes to out of a mine in Utah, goes to a facility in Illinois, and then goes to Europe and back, right? It's all over the place. And the more you can concentrate this, the more you can drive down costs, and the more you have, you're gonna get there eventually, but you're gonna get there faster to cost parity and cost benefit over other forms of energy production if you can bring the cost of fuel down and you can do more in the same spot. And as Bethany pointed out, you can build out the human capital in one spot. And I think there is a nexus to be built here, but it's going to require communities and states to say, we want it, and getting it all in one place. Otherwise, it's going to be distributed.
Love it. Hey, Mark.
10 years from now, Energy Fuels, White Mesa Mill, about 6 to 8 gigawatts of fuel for reactors, okay?
That's how much
10 years
fuel
ago.
you
Yeah,
produce.
that's, I mean, that, and in addition, because you're
incredible.
aware, we have the ability to process rare earths.
Yeah.
And the rare earths give the most efficient motors to drive motors more efficiently, getting more efficiency out of those motors. You get about 10 to 20% better efficiency out of rare earth permanent magnet motors. And so our company was going to not only provide the fuel for these reactors, but it's going to provide the elements for high efficiency motors to be as efficient as possible on steroids.
I love it. And Mayor, what does your community look like in 10 years? Your growth is unbelievable. What does the nuclear landscape plus in your community look like?
Well, let me start out by saying, yeah, success goes to those that are willing to do the work, right? So nothing is guaranteed, but I believe we have people that are willing to do the work and not drop the ball on this. So when this happens, when we're able to bring all of this together, we're going to see the birth of new industries that we haven't even contemplated yet. So we're going to see new opportunities that haven't even been thought of. So we're going to, for example, we're going to create jobs across the spectrum. We're going to create a whole education process in creating a workforce up and down the supply chain. We're going to, when you have the ability to create energy, then you can dream about things like local food production. You can dream about things, people used to say, well, the supply of water is limited. We're going to make water. We're going to take our quality of life to a level that has not been seen yet. That's what I see.
I absolutely love it. It's abundance. That's what we're aiming for, right? Governor Cox gave a great speech last night about abundance when we did a bill signing, and he talked about energy abundance, but it goes across all spectrums, and it really does start with an energy abundance, an abundance mentality. That's a great point. Rick, what do you see? How do you see that nuclear energy landscape in Utah in 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, large infrastructure projects take time. It's there's hurdles that we can knock down together. I like what the state is doing in terms of permitting, central permitting authorities, and some of the other tools that you've put together to try to make it move quicker. But look, even a gas turbine now is 3 to 4 years. The fact is, we've been sleeping at the wheel as a country for the last 10 or 15 years, and we're just waking up now, and we don't have supply chains, and we have, we're really at the beginning of the nuclear renaissance here to get new technologies through the licensing process. So that being said, I think we have to get started now to start seeing the fruits of our labor in 10 years. I think realistically, we could have 4 of our SMR 300s up and running or very close to in the next 10 years. In 2034, 2035, we could bring 4 SMRs online. That's 1,200 megawatts.
Right here in Utah?
Yeah.
Love it.
I think you could have a
Incredible.
couple other companies potentially doing the same. I think you could have manufacturing here, building those parts, and a workforce that's really just at the crest, right? This is going to be a hockey stick, and I think 2034, 2035 will be coming up that ramp and really getting ready for the build out in the following 10 years, which could be 10 to 15 gigawatts of new nuclear.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Okay, we're about out of time. I just want to kind of do one more question, kind of a lightning round. So we have a lot of our both legislative leadership and regulators and other leaders in the state of Utah here. So as both people in the industry and communities and working in this space, what would be one thing that we can do as a state to help us as we navigate kind of the next short term, 12 to 18 months, to keep this momentum going? What can we do now? And what should we be doing now? And give me any of your final thoughts, because this will be our last chance. So let's just start here, Drew, and go across.
Yeah, I think honestly, and a lot of folks that point this out, the table in Utah is set pretty nice. I think everybody in this room, it's going out there and having these conversations with your constituents, answering their questions, being honest about the opportunity for nuclear in Utah, and making sure that your communities are primed to accept these projects and really be a part of this new nuclear renaissance. And I think that's probably my final comment. This is happening. And I just think there's a lot that could happen in Utah if you guys go out and get it done.
Love it. Thank you, Drew. Mark?
Just continue the long-term view, stability, regulation, not looking to election cycles. But I think Utah does this in a great way, and so does Wyoming and Idaho. So just keep moving forward and looking forward.
Thank you. That's great. Mayor?
Well, I believe that Utah is in a unique position. I think the rare thing about Utah is we can do the whole spectrum of supply chain from beginning to end. But in order to get there, I'm going to focus on that workforce, educating that whole industry. And so our institutions of higher learning, and well, we could even start in high school for that matter, training our people, educating our people to fill those jobs, preparing them to get this work done. And that's going to take a little while, but that's something that we can do and we can start right now.
I love it. I love it. Rick, last final comment.
Yeah, I think the state's done a lot already. I mean, I was explaining earlier, we screen. There's so much interest right now in nuclear, and we have limited resources and time. So where do we spend our time? We have a procedure to screen, and usually it's like, does the state or country have existing supportive policies, and nuclear is another. Utah wasn't on our list, to be honest. It was our partners here that brought us in. And after you pass the policies that now are very supportive of nuclear, you've been very vocal about that. The cooperation between the states, I said, I have to get out here and find out what's going on in Utah. So
Yeah.
I'm here now.
Good
I
things.
love what you're doing.
Good things are going on in Utah.
Yeah, it's really great. It's exciting. And, I think these discussions are just the beginning. So just to, continue listening to industry, and we'll continue listening to you. These are large, long-term projects. It really requires partnership. And that requires open communication and dialogue on what policies we need. And I don't have a specific ask, but I'm sure I will as we dig down. So hoping you'll have open ears when I come to you. Thank you for everything
Absolutely,
you've done.
we are always have open ears. But audience, let's hear it for our panel here. They did a fantastic job.